Welcome back, guys, to another roundtable. My name's Adam. With me, I have Victor.
Hi, everyone.
And today, we have a very special guest, all the way from SGX Recco. His name is Yong Meng. You're the Vice President of Security Surveillance. So, welcome.
Yes, hi Adam, hi Victor. Thanks for having me here.
So, thank you for being here. Today, we're going to talk about pump and dump in the stock market. So, I think this is stuff like that happens in the stock market. We want to people fall for that, and we want to find out what this pump and dump is, any examples in Singapore and your role in, catching these scammers, I would call them that, and how we can actually avoid, these pump and dump scenarios so to, save our money and stuff like that. Okay, so before we dive into all of that, tell us a bit more about your, SGX Recco very briefly and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Yong Meng and I'm from the Singapore Exchange Regulation, SGX Recco in short. The organization SGX Recco is an independent subsidiary of SGX, which undertakes the frontline regulatory functions, and I'm from the equity surveillance team. So the role of surveillance, the function in Recco monitors trading activities of instruments that are listed on SGX securities and derivatives market. Mm-hmm. Its primary goal is to uphold market integrity, and as part of doing so, we aim to detect market misconducts as well as breaches of the other SGX rules and the relevant laws of Securities Futures Act. And that kinds of bring us back to what is a pump and dump.
All right. So maybe some of people don't really know what a pump and dump is. For those who don't know, tell us really quickly what a pump and dump is.
Yeah, pump and dump itself, it can actually take various forms, but typically it involves a scammer or a group of scammers trying to artificially inflate share prices through the dissemination of false or misleading information, so that they are able to actually get out or benefit from selling at higher prices. Mm-hmm. So once they start selling and prices start to fall, the investors are then left to hold on to the losses, and that kind of a cycle is what we probably see as a pump and dump.
Yeah, I think we've seen quite a few times actually. Yeah. So I think why don't you go through the phases of a pump and dump? I think that's kind of what it is. But how do we identify one through its phases and all that?
Well, it's called a pump and dump, but most often there's usually an initial phase that we call it the luring phase. Mm-hmm. In order for such a scheme to work, right, you would need a pool of potential victims. And so they usually start off by casting their net really wide in order to gain the trust of as many potential victims through various methods. Okay. One of the ways that they can go about doing this is to build on personal relationship. So, for example, they could send private messages, and over time, they build rapport and gain the trust of these potential victims. If you notice, that's actually what we see for some of the stock scams that happen overseas. Mm-hmm. But if you can imagine, it can be quite time-consuming to actually reach out on an individual basis. So on the other spectrum of this, the scammers could also make use of mass chat groups to build reputable profiles in order to gain as many followers in the shortest time possible. Mm-hmm. If I may illustrate this with an example, I think here is a mock-up Telegram chat group where scammer A is the main guru here. And if we dig a bit deeper into the chats, right, you could see that Scammer A is actually, not only that he's working with Scammer B, they have also created multiple clones of themselves in the form of A1, B1, and B2. And that's really to support the impression that Scammer A is a good spotter of price trends. I mean, end of the day, what they're trying to achieve and their goal is really to make the potential victims believe that by following on Scammer A's call, the trades would seem extremely profitable.
Yeah, I can kind of get the idea, but how do these people fall into these chat groups in the first place? How do they, just decide to, okay, I'll join this chat group, and I don't know, everyone's a stranger there, and after a while, okay, I'll trust whatever you tell me. How does that work? Because I find it so, I would say touch wood, it shouldn't happen to me, but how does it happen? How do people fall for that?
Yeah, I know what you're trying to drive at, because I myself, I get this kind of messages as well, right? Okay. Yeah, so you have to be careful. But really, for this particular chat group, it originated from traditional forums such as the online share forums. Mm-hmm. So as it was, they were using it as a platform to share information and knowledge. They kind of migrated to this Telegram chat group, and the intention is still the same, where they want to share information and knowledge about the Singapore stock market. So nothing wrong with that. Yeah, okay. But as time passed, there's just this handful of individuals that saw the opportunity and tried to make use of it to carry out their schemes.
I think I've also seen scammers impersonating reputable brands and kind of saying, hey, then the people kind of mistake, that scammer for that company or for whoever it is,
right.
and then they trust him. So just for the record, we have a Telegram chat group, but we don't share anything there. All right, so we just share articles and all that. So you ever see, a chat group that says buy this or buy that, we never do that, just to make sure. So yeah, people come into like chat groups or forums or whatever channel there is. Basically, they just learn to trust the scammer over time.
Yeah.
Okay, then what happens next?
That's right. So after going through the various efforts in trying to gather potential victims, right, I think the next phase is what we call as the pumping phase, which is where the real action starts in the stock market. Before the scammer actually get their people to pump up the share price, they would first need to accumulate and get their positions on the shares that they are targeting at prevailing low prices, right? And at the same time, they would enter sell orders at higher prices in anticipation of a successful share pump up.
So usually all these shares are more illiquid, is it? Or
yeah, you could say that. I mean, the lower price and the more illiquid kind of stocks, I mean, it would take a different kind of a cash outlay in order to achieve the same kind of target price movements, right?
Okay, got it.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, they basically push the price higher.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the next step that they do is that they will then start create some kind of excitement in the social media platforms, as well as building hype around this stock. So by this time, right, the potential victims that were taken in by the earlier luring phase, they will start to wonder, is this the right time that I should get into? Would I miss the boat if I go in too late? Those kind of things. So they start to feel pressurized in getting in similar positions. And that's where the buying pressure starts to pile up. And as more people piles in, the price would start to increase. And that's kind of characterizing the pumping phase.
Right. So I think a lot of it is just kind of like playing on human emotions, FOMO, fear of missing out. Because, I mean, there's so many things that we always talk about on our channel about so many things you need to do before you buy anything, because you need to really understand. You're basically getting married to a stock in a way if you buy it for long term.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's so many things to look out for, but sometimes just emotions come into it. They don't understand what it is, but they see the stock prices going up. They just give in and they just buy, and it happens. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So once the price goes up, and then I guess the dumping then happens. So how do the scammers get out? How do people know finally, oh my God, I got scammed? What happens?
I think one of the common thing that we observe is that for the scammers, they would usually proclaim higher target prices in the chat groups as compared to their target selling prices as their price of their sell orders. So here in this chat, this mock-up chat, I think we could see that the group, they have claimed that they are targeting for a target price of 2.7 cents for the stock. But in fact, they have actually already went in and get their sell orders ready and queued up at 2.5 and 2.6 cents. So that's in a way that once price start to move, they'll be able to sell at higher prices before everyone else does. So that's the way that they get out at higher prices. And this last phase of selling is what we know as the dumping phase, where prices start to mean revert due to the selling pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So eventually there are basically no more buyers to fan the flames, and then that's it.
left with the shares.
The people are left holding the bag, and then it just comes down.
That's right.
So
I think broadly, that's how the pump and dump broadly categorized as the luring, pumping, and dumping phases. And I hope and I believe that these patterns can help investors in recognizing such scams.
All right. So the luring phase, I think, is crucial to this whole thing, because it's where the trust is built.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's always good to be a skeptic. I mean, there's so many things that we talk about on our channel as well. And it's like, it's good to question us as well. We have our opinions, you have your opinions. Always good to do your own due diligence. So any infamous examples of pump and dumps in Singapore?
I think this came really timely because as recent as December last year, a case was brought to court where the suspect was charged for making false statements in a Telegram chat group that had the effect of inducing other members of the group to purchase in shares that he had held. He was eventually fined $350,000 and sentenced to 19 months jail.
So do you know how many people were in that particular chat group? How many people were, I guess, scammed?
Yeah, in fact, it was over 1,000, but I probably wouldn't tell. Wouldn't be able to tell how many were scammed. But the strength of the chat group was in more than thousands.
Yeah. I think sometimes people, when they join the Telegram group chat, they just believe whatever the person just posts. Right? I think at the end of the day, we as investors, we also have to question ourselves. Whether
That's right.
why we are making the money? Why is only specifically for this 1,000 people making? Why not other people? Why is it so good And why does he want to share me the information, right? I think that's the question that most people should ask, but then they don't ask, they just get lured in.
Yeah, I think these scammers, I guess they're brilliant in their own way,
Yeah.
in the way that they can convince people
Yeah.
to come and like come along with me for the ride. Now, how do they, hoodwink all these kind of, these people? How do they do it? I mean, it seems like they have a certain level of charm or something.
Right. I think before I go into that, I would say that technology played a part in shaping the way these scams are being carried out. In the past, where people want to share information and views, they go to the traditional forums such as the online share forums and stuff. But as technology advances, the platforms that are more quicker in terms of reaction time, such as WhatsApp chat as well as Telegram chat, they start to surface. But if used in the wrong way, it can be pretty hazardous, as what we have seen in this Telegram chat case. So in this case, what the suspect did was that he actually gained many followers in the chat group, and he used strong statements to mislead others. His false statements included overstating target prices, his target prices for the securities that he held. Yeah, so what he would do is that he would typically purchase shares and thereafter promote the stock on the Telegram chat group. And as part of promoting, he overstates his target price such that he's able to draw attention from others. And when prices start to go up, he's able to sell at higher prices before everyone else does.
Okay.
Yeah. In addition to that, he had also worked with other individuals as well as created alliances in the Telegram chat group in order to create like the kind of support and credibility as part of the luring phase that we have mentioned earlier.
All right. So the aftermath of this is basically the share price came down. It was dumped.
That's right.
And investors were left holding the bag.
Right, but as Jax, when we detected this or when we saw this, it was we had to refer the case to the authorities. But at the same time, I think it's equally important that the public needed to be made aware about this so that they avoid falling for such scam. Right.
Yeah.
So very shortly after, SGX RegCo went out with a regulatory announcement in December 2020 to warn the public about our observations. I think eventually the suspect was found guilty, but I think the prosecution of this case kind of shed light to many about how such stock scams actually work, and it kind of served as a deterrence as well as a public education to create more awareness.
All right. I think like you mentioned just now, when fishy behavior like this surfaces, sometimes, I mean, it's random. I mean, things pop up. How do you detect it? How do you know, hey, there's something going on right here? And what are the preemptive measures that you can, take to kind of hey, stop that, we look into that. How do you do that?
Right. I think it's not just about pump and dump. Regardless of the type of market misconduct, SGX RegCo, we are always on the lookout for unusual activities that may lead to potential market abuse.
Yeah.
So in order to help us in doing so, there are three things and three main pillars that we have. The first, we believe in technology. We believe in harnessing technology that aids in our regulatory efforts. So one such example is the implementation of artificial intelligence in our surveillance alerts in 2019. How it worked is that the AI would strip out the effect of overseas overnight market news as well as movement, and then our analysts would be able to really focus and concentrate our efforts on whatever that's remaining as the alerts that truly require attention. And that kind of brings us to a second pillar, which is to have the right people to look at a range of information, be it the corporate developments, industry market trends, as well as macroeconomic factors. And that's to group the alerts together into various buckets of required action, and thereafter follow up if there's any merits for further investigation.
So that means at any time there's a share spike, straight away you sort of the computer will just alert you that there's a spike. Then all of you start to investigate it.
Yeah, so that's part of the system in
Part of
terms
the
of
system, okay.
in terms of automation, in terms of alerting when there's any unusual price or price or volume movements.
Okay, so the system kind of flags it, but you still have people looking at it, see if maybe sometimes it's a legitimate
That's
price rise, right? Sometimes.
That's right. So and so it's important for the analyst to look at various information in order to form that kind of analysis and whether or not there's any further action that's required.
Also, so if there's action to be taken, what kind of action do you guys normally do? Do you suspend the share trading? or you just put out a warning? You know,
That is under SGX powers
Okay.
to be able to suspend the stock, but I think that's a bit of further steps
Okay.
down the road. The interim steps that we can take is really, if it involves a company, listed company, in terms of unusual share price or volume movements, some of the things that we could do is things like issuing a trading query whenever there's no explainable factors that could explain how the share price and the volume movements actually worked.
Yeah. I think that is the main key, cannot explain. Right.
Okay.
A lot of times, sometimes you see that the share price suddenly spike and you can't explain. There's no fundamental.
maybe
there's no
someone
nothing.
just likes the stock.
Yeah, I mean, but it spike up too much,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
then you have to be questionable already.
Especially
right?
if it's like a relatively
Yeah.
illiquid stock.
Yeah.
And then there's one
Correct,
person who's
correct.
like going, hey, I
Yeah.
like it. I just want to buy it. And it just
Yeah.
jumps up like
No,
that.
but I think most people should think this way. But then I think what I see in some of the investors that falls into the scam is like when the thing spike, oh, can I make money out of it? That's the wrong mentality, right? Yeah.
I guess some people have a very different mindset when it
Yeah.
comes to
Right.
being in the stock market.
Yeah.
So for us,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just I want to avoid these things. So I guess for people who basically want to avoid pump and dumps and these kind of scams in the stock market, what can they do to protect themselves so that they're not victims of this?
Yeah, I think apart from the public, right, I would rather see it as something from the perspective of three key players, and all kind of have a role to play in this. First and foremost is the regulator. So at the SGX level, we are able to see trading activities from our surveillance system, and we can match it against user information that we obtain from the central depository system. And that actually led to the detection of this Telegram case,
Oh,
right?
wow, okay.
Right. So once a misconduct is identified, we then make a referral to the authorities and we work closely with them for follow-up enforcement actions if necessary. Right. And these referral figures are published on the SGX website and they are released on a regular basis. The next level that I'll talk about is the brokers, which are known officially as the members of our securities market. They are a very important gatekeeper at our marketplace. So over the years, through initiatives such as handbooks and guidebooks that includes case studies as well as best practices, as well as supplementing with relevant alerts that are triggered at the exchange level, we forge a closer working relationship and aims to bring up the kind of level of detection at the members' end. And lastly, back to your point about the investing public, right? There are a few warning signs that you can pay attention to. First, it's really about investment advisors that come knocking your way that are not backed by fundamentals. You may really want to pay attention to that. Second, significant and substantial share price increases that has no relevant news, like what you say about the not explainable. And third, there are alerts that are issued by the SGX RegCo, which can be found on our website. Just to name a few, that's the trading queries as well as trade with caution alerts that we issue from time to time when necessary and where required. In addition to that, I think investors can also play their part by taking note of the acronym SCAM, SCAM.
Okay.
Right? S stands for being skeptical. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is, right? Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to just take a pause, have a think, and see whether the investment opportunity that's presented in front of you is that worthwhile to go ahead. Second is on C, to conduct due diligence. I can't emphasize more important on this, but always do your homework before investing, and when necessary, consult advice from the professionals, right? A refers to paying attention to the various warning signs that we have talked about. And lastly, M is to be mindful about your money. I mean, if all the steps failed, the last step is really to be mindful about your money, because once it's wired out or transferred out, you probably can't get it back.
All right.
Yeah, I think in short, it really takes a collective effort in combating against such scams.
Yeah.
And really, it thrives on human greed. So if there's anything that you can take away from this, it really is to be cautious in terms of your investment decision and never be blindly led by your greed for quick profits.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful tip. I mean, I think not just tip, but I guess it's life advice, I guess. When you're greedy, these things can happen to you. Because if you're not greedy, you really just go like, why should I buy this?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not interested, But maybe if you're greedy, you're just more prone to these kind of things. So I think that's really helpful. So SCAM, you guys came up with that scam.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to remember.
Yep.
And of course, like basically anytime a stock price goes up, you're going to find out, just ask the question why. why did it go up, and then of course you can go check out SGX, the links that you basically mentioned,
That's
whether
right.
there's some alerts relating to that company. So it's really, really useful. Okay, so any kind of other scams that we have, from your experience in the Singapore stock market as well?
I think nowadays there are just as many scams as there are scammers out there, right? Like the popularity of chat groups, it makes it even more highly possible. And just to name a few, and what Victor earlier mentioned, they can imitate and use names of prominent people, financial institutions, or even like famous investors. So at this point, I would just like to highlight that at SGX here, we are not spared either, because our company name can also get abused. But we wish to highlight that for SGX, we don't collect deposits for your investments, and we don't provide any stock recommendations. So whenever you are in doubt or need any clarification, feel free to please reach out to us at sgx.com.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And can we report any fishy behavior to SGX Redco as well?
Well, most certainly, I think as with all other exchanges, there's an avenue for reporting of any suspicion, and you can do that at our whistleblowing office email, which is redco_whistleblowing@sgx.com. And over here, we treat, rest assured that we treat market abuse seriously.
All right. So there is a way to let you guys know, and I guess go do your due diligence as well.
That's right.
And if there's anything there, you guys will step in.
That's right.
All right. So I think that's pretty useful. I mean, pump and dump scenarios are not something that's, it's real. It happens
around the world.
Yeah. And the most recent one, this December 2022, Telegram group chat in Singapore. Happen as well. So you can lose your money if you're greedy and you fall for these things. Yep. All right. So I think that was really useful, very, very helpful. I hope that, if you're afraid of, all these things happening, I think these are really good tips that you can take on board with yourself, how you can prevent that, from happening to you. All right. I think that was a pretty good wrap up, right?
Yep.
All right. So my name is Adam. That is Victor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yongming. You're all the way from SGX Redco to share about your experience and how SGX Redco basically plays its role in, helping us weed out all these scams in the stock market. And of course, we have to play our part as well. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts. And of course, if you like this roundtable, please hit the like button. Tell us we're doing a great job. Any questions about, pump and dumps, put them in the comment section. And then, of course, subscribe to our channel when new roundtables coming up again. And we'll love to see you around. So thank you so much for Yongming once again. And we'll see you around.